and a reminder of what's going on in a nation. For I know, this is Moses speaking, thy rebellion and thy stiff neck, behold, while I am yet alive with you this day, you have been rebellious against the Lord, and how much more after my death? Gather unto me all the elders of your tribes and your officers, that I may speak these words in their ears and call heaven and earth to record or to witness against them. For I know that after my death you will utterly corrupt yourselves and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you. And evil will befall you in the latter days, because you will do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger through the work of your hands. And Moses spake in the ears of all the congregation of Israel the words of this song until they were ended. So now we start the song. And by the way, in some other verses, it indicates that Joshua also sang with him, so it was a duet. Don't know how they did that, both knowing what the words were, unless they were already written down or something, but it is kind of a curious thing that they did that. Or they might have done it in two different locations and each one individually. But anyway, here's the song. Give ear, O ye heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. My doctrine, or my learning, shall drop as the rain, my speech shall distill as the dew, and the small rain upon the tender herb, and as the showers upon the grass, because I will publish the name of the Lord. Ascribe ye greatness unto our God. So it starts out with a very positive kind of note, and a good thing spoken toward God. He is the rock. His work is perfect, for all his ways are judgment. A God of truth and without iniquity. Just and right or upright is he. Because justice and righteousness are the same word in both Hebrew and Greek. And so this word for right is actually upright, a little different word here. Note that there is a mention of him being without iniquity. This is the perversity of nature that mankind has. And this would also be true of those other gods, that they were perverse and possessed this perverseness that Jehovah would not possess this perverseness. Also, he's called the rock. Now, and this is kind of one of the things I did note as I went through it the first time, last time, that the word rock was in here more than once. And so I did a little follow-up on it and found some interesting things. And we're not going to go through everything that I found or looked at, but one thing to note, this word for rock, and there's more than one word for rock, but this particular word is used in the Old Testament many times to refer to God. Sometimes it's not even translated rock. Sometimes it's translated strength. And it has the idea of a foundational rock, bedrock kind of thing. So he is called the rock. And this is also the word for rock that is used where the water flowed out of the rock. So it wasn't just a loose stone or something like that. It was actually a bedrock type situation. We're going to even see some other places where it's described even more drastically, I guess you could say. But this is also mentioned in the New Testament. So I want to go there for a minute in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 1. Oh, by the way, yes. If you want to do a little study on your own on this, the Strong's number for this particular word is 6697. So you can look that up in a version that has the strong numbers tied to it, or in your Strong's Concordance if you have one, and go through the entire Old Testament and see quite a number of places where it obviously refers to God. And it does so many other places. One place that I thought was interesting is in 1 Samuel 2:2. We're not going to go there, but it's our God is a rock. And the phraseology is just like the chorus that we occasionally sing. And I think that's probably where somebody got it from. So this is just homework, if you will, or a study to chase this down on your own. See where this word appears in the Old Testament. It does not always refer to God, but it does frequently. And it does have the idea of a bedrock or a strong thing. I was also reminded as I was kind of going through this of the significance of this in the background when Jesus spoke the parable of the wise man who built his house on a rock. It has a little different connotation when you have this recognition of what the rock is in the Old Testament. So, anyway, going on, 1 Corinthians 10, and we'll just look at a few verses here. There's more in the context that I think is very valuable and kind of applies to this, but we'll limit ourselves to what we're looking at. Verse 1, moreover, brethren, I would not that you should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea. Now he's referring here to the Jews. And he's talking to Christians there in Corinth, which would include Jews and Gentiles. But as he says, our fathers, this would refer to him and the other Jews, their fathers, were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea. They were all immersed unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. This identifies the rock that is God as the second person of the Godhead. But with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now these things were our examples, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. The word examples is the word type. And there are many people Bible students, who look at the idea of type and find types all over the Old Testament. I think they are limited. Here is one. This is a type or an example that Israel lusted after evil things. And that's an example, if you will, for us. So, going back to Deuteronomy. There's more in the context. You can read more. And as Paul referred back to the Old Testament and the value of the Old Testament for the Corinthians in particular, and also for us. But we'll go back here. He is the rock. His work is perfect. For all his ways are judgment, a God of truth and without iniquity, just and upright is he. They have corrupted themselves. Their spot is not the spot of his children. They are a perverse and crooked generation. In other words, what's this middle phrase here? Their spot is not the spot of his children indicates they're not his children because they're blemished. That's the idea that it carries here. The word spot is a blemish. Do you thus requite the Lord, O foolish people and unwise? Is not he thy father that hath bought thee? Hath he not made thee and established thee? Remember the days of old, consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee, thy elders, and they will tell thee. Now this song is intended, or was intended when Moses wrote it here, to be sung throughout the following generations, and to be taught from father to son, from parent to child, all the way through the generations. And so here is a reminder for those later on in particular to ask about the past, about history. History is important for us to know because we can learn from it. The history that is recorded in Scripture, especially for the Jews, was important for them to know and remember about it. Verse 8, when the Most High divided the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, or mankind, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. In other words, the priority was the children or the sons of Israel. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. Note the focus here on the people of Jacob and the Lord's people. He found him in a desert land in the waste, howling wilderness. He led him about. He instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. The word apple is actually the black part, so it's the center focus of his eye is the idea here that is meant by this phrase. As an eagle stirreth up her nest, fluttereth over her young, spreadeth abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings, so the Lord alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. In other words, what's being said is that there is Jehovah did all of this by himself without the help of any other gods. That's an important aspect for the children of Israel to remember. So there is no reason at all for them to go and worship these other gods or even pay any attention to them at all. That there was no strange God with the Lord helping him out. Oh, by the way, many of these other pagan religions that worship these other gods recognized that there was one creator God, but he wasn't the one that they dealt with or worshiped. They went and worshiped these others that they were interacting with on a daily basis or a regular basis. This is, by the way, similar to what we see in Romans 1, where mankind, all of mankind, all 8 of them, in Noah's day, when they came off the ark, deviated and began worshiping the things of nature alongside of God. It wasn't that they said there is no God at all, but rather they began worshiping these other things that were not the one true God. So these are the strange gods. And what's true of these strange gods? We saw that God was unique in that he was not perverse. He didn't have iniquity earlier in this. We'll see some more a little bit later. He made him to ride on the high places of the earth, that he might eat the increase of the fields. He made him to suck honey out of the rock and oil out of the flinty rock. The word flinty means the really hard rock that we refer to as flint, or another word for it, I believe, is chert. And these are 2 different words for rock, by the way. This is the one that we're following that is called the flinty rock. And so God made oil, and this would be the not petroleum, but rather the oil that comes from an olive or some kind of produce like that, right out of the flint rock. It doesn't normally grow there. God could make it grow there and be productive for Israel. Butter of kine or cattle, milk of sheep, with fat of lambs, and rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats with the fat of kidneys of wheat. The phrase, the fat of kidneys of wheat, short way of saying that is the best wheat. And thou didst drink the pure blood of the grape, but Jeshurun waxed fat and kicked Thou art waxen fat, thou art grown thick, thou art covered with fatness. Then he forsook God, which made him, and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation. The word rock here is the one that we're following, and this is another reference to God as a rock, and here it is a rock of salvation. And this would be his physical salvation, his physical well-being. The word Jeshurun, this occurs only 4 times in the whole Old Testament. And this is a title. It actually is built on the word that means upright. And this is a title for Israel, and looking at Israel at a time when it is upright. So what does he say about them? But Jeshurun waxed fat. In other words, when they were acting right and everything was going well for Israel, they were upright. But then they got, to paraphrase this, fat and lazy, not paying attention to God, forsaking God. Why is everything going so well? It was because we're working hard. It's because it's because of us, or other reasons that don't have anything to do with Jehovah. So they forget God and go a different direction. So that's kind of like the pendulum swinging. Things go bad, they straighten up. They straighten up, things go well. Then they forget about God and it goes back the other way. And so the word Jeshurun is a reference to Israel as the upright one. And so that's what happens when they are acting right, then they get lazy, spiritually speaking. The word Jeshurun will occur 2 more times in this context, and then it's once in the book of Isaiah. Going on to verse 16. They provoked him to jealousy with strange gods. With abominations provoked they him to anger. Now this is in the song. This is a witness to Israel as they're singing it, to remind them when things are going bad, this is what the situation is. And with these strange gods in particular. They sacrificed unto devils. Now, this is actually an Old Testament word, only appears twice in the Old Testament, and it's the word demons. It looked, as I first looked at it, looked like it might be related to the word almighty, but it's supposedly a different root, but it's similar to that. So the sacrifice to these strange gods was a sacrifice to demons. So this identifies for us, and this is something kind of important, and you can see it a little bit in 1 Corinthians 8 when Paul talks about these things. That when someone is worshiping or sacrificing to or dealing with an idol, there's a demon involved. Idolatry is a work of the flesh. But demons, Satan and his demons take advantage of that aspect. And the person who is using this work of the flesh of idolatry is actually dealing with a demon behind that idol. So they sacrificed unto demons. By the way, this is also why they're called gods. Other gods is because they are other strong ones. They have a strength that is greater than human beings, and so they are recognized on that basis as gods, but they're not the one true God. They are, according to this, demons. Not to gods whom they knew not, and to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came up newly, whom your fathers feared not. So these are new ones, and you can see this through the history of Israel, that they began to worship gods that they were previously unacquainted with, that were the gods of the nations that they overcame or that were their neighbors. One of them mentioned later is the gods of the Moabites. One in particular that some people would worship. And that particular god required human sacrifice. Yeah, that's in the Bible if you read it correctly. Going on, verse 18. Of the rock that begat thee, thou art unmindful, and hast forgotten God that formed thee. So you see the pendulum swinging that way, that they were living upright and things are going well, and they have completely forgotten. Note that it's called the rock again. The rock frequently in this particular passage. And when the Lord saw it, he abhorred them because of the provoking of his sons and of his daughters. And he said, I will hide my face from them. This gives Israel information when they see these things going on. Here's the song, tells them exactly what the situation is. I will see what their end shall be, for they are a very froward generation, children in whom is no faith. Note that phraseology. This is because they are not believing. They have moved me to jealousy with that which is not God. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities, and I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. Now this is a theme that you can read it in Hosea. You can read it in the New Testament, how that Paul and Peter both talk about the idea that God has turned to the Gentiles to provoke Israel to jealousy. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. Now, the foolish nation is from the perspective of the Jews, and as God begins to deal with the Gentiles, they are foolish until they believe. For a fire is kindled in my anger, and shall burn into the lowest hell, and shall consume the earth with her increase, and set on fire the foundations of the mountains. I did a right justified to the wrong group of letters there. I don't know if you noticed that. Usually I do it with the Hebrew, and I did it with the English part by mistake. This is an indication of something that is burning in the lowest Sheol that will end up consuming the earth. And I think that deals with where do things start at the when the heaven and earth, the elements shall melt. It starts right here. God's already got it there. He's got the end figured out. Verse 23, I will heap mischiefs upon them. I will spend mine arrows upon them. They shall be burnt with hunger and devoured with burning heat and with bitter destruction. I will also send the teeth of beasts upon them and the poison of serpents in the dust. So when Israel is not believing, this is how God will be treating them. So this comes completely to the current day as well. The sword without and terror within shall destroy both the young man and the virgin, the suckling also, with the man of gray hairs. I said I would scatter them into the corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. Were it not that I feared, and this is a statement from God saying this is a possibility, but it's not going to happen this way. And he says why. See in the next verse. Were it not that I feared the wrath of the enemy, that is their enemies and the enemies of God, lest their adversaries should behave themselves strangely, and lest they should say, our hand is high, and the Lord hath not done all this. In other words, when all of the bad things are happening, one of the reasons that God is going to not just throw them away completely is because those who are doing all those bad things to him will say, this is being done because we're strong. Our hand is high. The idea of hand up high is you're going in victory. And it's all because you're so great. You know, it's like the winners of the game jumping up and down afterwards, celebrating. That's the idea of the high hand. And they say, Jehovah's not done this. But God's going to teach them a lesson. See? The reason that God doesn't put them away is for his own glory and keeping his own promises. It's not anything else. It's for his glory. Not because Israel is great. They can only be great when he makes them great. Verse 28, for they are a nation void of counsel, neither is there any understanding in them. Oh, that they were wise, that they understood this, that they would consider their latter end. How should one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight, except their rock had sold them and the Lord had shut them up? Now, what this is talking about is that Israel, looking at their plight and the enemies of God and Israel, looking at their victories, would have to say, they have a failure to recognize, and this statement is God saying, this couldn't happen that one would chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight, except that their rock, their God, had sold them. This wouldn't happen to Israel if God hadn't done it. And the Lord, Jehovah, had shut them up. Okay? So we see part of the bad things happening to Israel, and it's very important to recognize it's intended for God's glory. And he's going to make sure it ends up that way. And one way that he does is that when they turn around, then he glorifies himself in their salvation, their rescue. Okay? Going on. For their rock is not as our rock, even our enemies themselves being judges. Now this is a way of saying even those enemies who defeat Israel or are against Israel, they recognize that their rock, their God, is not the same as Israel's God. When they make a determination, it's not the same. Now, what they think is, when they are the victors, that it's because of their own strength, because of how good and how great they are. They still know there's a difference between the gods. Okay? For their vine is of the vine of Sodom and the fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter. This is looking at a result of what Israel would be like in this bad time when they have forgotten God. Their wine is the poison of dragons and the cruel venom of asps. It is not this laid up in store with me and sealed up among my treasures? This is God speaking. I have all of these things ready to give Israel when they've forgotten me, to remind them. This is in a song that every Jewish child was supposed to learn and sing through the generations. To me belongeth vengeance and recompense. Their foot shall slide in due time, for the day of their calamity is at hand, and the things that shall come upon them make haste. So God will make right all of these things. He's the one that deals in vengeance, and vengeance is simply making things right, making things back, even in terms of righteousness. For the Lord shall judge his people and repent or be compassionate. It's not the word change of mind. It's not the word, I think it's a misunderstanding of repent, even by the translators back then. Could carry the idea of regret, but more the idea of compassion. The Lord shall judge his people and have compassion himself for his servants when he sees that their power is gone and there is none shut up or left. And he shall say, where are their gods, their rock in whom they trusted? So this is God speaking about Israel as he has punished them for going after other gods. And statement here, so where are their gods now? Where is their rock, identifying the other gods as the rock in whom they trusted, which did eat the fat of their sacrifices, this is referring to the other gods, and drank the wine of their drink offerings. Let them rise up and help you and be your protection. Sarcasm. See now that I, even I am he, and there is no God with me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver out of my hand. So the conclusion here, when they're in that particular situation, we see some sarcasm from God's perspective about, okay, you want to be that way? Ask your own gods for help. But remember, it's me. I'm the one that does all of these things. For I lift up my hand to heaven and say, I live forever. This is, the phraseology is, I live, and it has the pronoun I, so that's emphatic. I live indefinitely. Or, same word carries the idea, depending on context, and I think here is a legitimate place, eternally. God is eternal. If I whet my glittering sword, or sharpen my glittering sword, and my hand take hold on judgment, I will render judgment to mine enemies and reward them that hate me. The word reward probably should be repay. In other words, he's not giving them a benefit. He's giving them a payment. Repay the ones that hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword shall devour flesh, and that with the blood of the slain and of the captives, from the beginning of revenges upon the enemy. In other words, this is how God is going to take vengeance, make things right, is that there will be blood. Rejoice, O ye nations. This includes the Gentiles with his people. Note something interesting here. Gentiles are supposed to rejoice along with the people. For he will avenge the blood of his servants and will render vengeance to his adversaries, those who are opposed to God, and we will be merciful unto his land and to his people. Now, when is this vengeance fulfillment? In the tribulation period, toward the end. Is there going to be blood at that time? Oh, yeah, right. The river of blood. Mhm. Who else is going to be able to rejoice at that time besides Israel? Certain Gentiles as well, because there will be Gentiles who also believe. And here it's mentioned. And it's right here in the song that they're going to sing for the whole time. And they should have known this, even in the church in Rome, about the Gentiles being associated with the Jews. Now, it's not the same as in the church, but God has always dealt with Gentiles as well, all the way through. So, shouldn't be strange. That was the end of the song. That's quite a last verse, isn't it? And Moses came and spake all the words of this song in the ears of the people, he and Hoshea, or Joshua, the son of Nun. So they both spoke the words, if you will. It was probably a sing-song kind of thing because it was poetic going on. Moses made an end of speaking all these words to all Israel, and he said unto them, set your hearts unto all the words which I testify among you this day, which you shall command your children to observe and to do all the words of this law. This is all of Deuteronomy in particular. For it is not a vain thing for you, because it is your life. It's important. It's your life. Now, I think that is an important aspect. He didn't say it's your salvation in the spiritual sense, or even life in your spiritual sense, although there are some indications that that aspect is there. This is their physical well-being and their livelihood. And through this thing you shall prolong your days in the land, whither you go over Jordan to possess it. This is how you stay in the land and prosper. And the Lord spake unto Moses that selfsame day, saying, get thee up into this mountain Abiram, unto Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, that is over against Jericho, and behold the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel for a possession, and die in the mount, whither thou goest up, and be gathered unto thy people, as Aaron thy brother died in Mount Hor, and was gathered unto his people. This phraseology, gathered unto your people, this is what happens to them in Sheol. That is, in the good part. Okay? I thought it was interesting, one of the things that I looked at kind of closely, the word die is in the imperative. God said to Moses, die. Now, if God says that, is it going to happen? Yes. But there's only one person that I know of that determined for himself that he was going to die, and that's Jesus when he was on the cross. I don't know how Moses did it, but he died. Not here. We have still a little more to read, but this is what God told him. This is what's going to happen, and you die. Okay? Going on. Because you trespassed against me among the children of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin, because you sanctified me not in the midst of the children of Israel. Now, the idea of sanctified is set apart. In other words, here, there's God, and Moses didn't do that. Yet thou shalt see the land before thee, but thou shalt not go thither unto the land which I gave the children of Israel. Now, I want to go back, and we did this before, but I want to repeat it. Back to one of the passages in Numbers, chapter 20, where this is the incident where Moses disobeyed, disbelieved God with regard to the waters. And this is why he did not go into the land. The instructions, Numbers 20 and verse 8, take the rod, gather thou the assembly together, thou and Aaron thy brother, and speak unto the rock before their eyes, and it shall give forth his water, and thou shalt bring forth to them water out of the rock, so thou shalt give the congregation and their beasts drink. By the way, this word rock is the word that we looked at before. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the congregation together before the rock, and he said unto them, hear now, you rebels, must we fetch for you water out of this rock? Who's we? Moses and Aaron. And Moses lifted up his hand, and with his rod he smote the rock twice. God said, speak to it. Moses struck the rock twice, and the water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their beasts also. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, because you believed me not, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. This is the water of Meribah, because the children of Israel strove with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them. Even though Moses didn't sanctify the Lord, he sanctified himself, or set himself apart, showed himself as set apart. Now I want to look at Numbers 27, and this is another passage that talks about Moses and the end, like it did in Deuteronomy. Verse 12, and the Lord said unto Moses, get thee up into this Mount Abarim, and see the land which I have given unto the children of Israel. And when thou hast seen it, thou also shalt be gathered unto thy people, as Aaron thy brother was gathered. For you rebelled against my commandment in the desert of Zin, in the strife of the congregation, to sanctify me at the water before their eyes, that is, the water of Meribah in Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin. So, that's why Moses didn't get to go into the land. He did not believe, and Aaron along with him did not believe. Aaron died earlier. Moses went all the way to the end, just before the children of Israel were supposed to go into the land, and God said, you're not going to go in. Now, he hasn't died yet, has a little bit more to do, and we'll go over that. This is what we see, and we'll close with this, what we see in chapter 31. This is the blessing wherewith Moses, the man of God, blessed the children of Israel before his death. One of the things that we see, Jacob did this before his death for all of his sons. And Moses is doing this for the tribes of Israel. And says some particular things about them as the tribes of Israel. We'll look through that and go through that next time when we meet, hopefully next week, unless we meet someplace else, which would be better. But we'll look at that. And so this is not, and this is identified as a blessing. So it's basically all of the good particular kinds of things. And we will see the word Jeshurun come up again, the upright one, in this chapter as we look through it. All right, let's close in prayer. Father, we're thankful as we looked back to the Old Testament and we see the errors that the children of Israel fell into and looking at the wrong things. And may we look to those things as examples and learn from them, because they are valuable to us, even though we do not need to obey the specific commandments that you gave to them there, that you commanded them and expected them to carry out in order to receive the blessing, but rather you have given us the blessings, all of the spiritual blessings in heavenly places, and you've given them to every single saved person today in this dispensation. And you've provided these things with us, but you expect us to live by them and with them based on the grace that you have toward us. We thank you for that. We thank you for those distinctions. And may we, considering the blessings that we have, always live and be thankful for what you are and what you have done with us. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.